Hey everyone, in this video we're going to talk about a vulnerability that's showing up on news stories and around social media called Acropalypse. Now I'm on record as being against giving clever names and logos and branding campaigns to vulnerabilities and security issues, but even I have to admit that Acropalypse is a pretty awesome name. So in the rest of this video, we'll talk about what it is, what it impacts, take a look under the hood and show how it works, do a quick demo, and finally, and maybe most importantly, talk about what we need to do and what we need to tell clients. So let's get started. So Acropalypse is a vulnerability in the way image files are handled that might expose sensitive data. And more specifically, the crop comes from taking an image file, removing parts of it, making it smaller, and then saving over the same file and then distributing it. That might happen if you take a screenshot of your entire monitor and only want to share part of it, or take a screenshot and realize that some sensitive piece of information is on there. Basically, if you take an image and then crop it, the part that you removed might still be recoverable, which is a pretty big problem if you're posting it online or sharing it with someone thinking that you removed any sensitive information. Okay, so what's impacted? Where might you run into this? Well, the issue was first identified on Pixel phones and the built-in photo editing tool, and then it was subsequently discovered to also impact Windows 10 with Snip and Sketch and Windows 11 with the snipping tool, the built-in tool for taking screenshots. So far, the Windows 10 version of snipping tool has not been impacted. And in those tools, the issue isn't limited to any specific file format. Both PNG and JPEGs are impacted, though it's easier to test JPEG images because it's a much simpler file format to work with. And in terms of exploit complexity, on the Google side, there's a website you can upload files to right there and see what's recoverable. It's not quite that automated on the Windows side, but as we'll see in the demo, it's still not that hard to check. Okay, so let's take a look under the hood and talk about what's actually happening and how this is possible. We'll go into even more detail when we do the demo. To start, we need to think about how programs work with files. When they try to read something, when they try to write something, what's happening behind the scenes? To start, the program calls a function called open. That's what's happening behind the scenes when we open a PDF to read it or a Word document to edit it. And doing that requires two pieces of information. One is the file name, which might include the literal file name and also what folder it's in. The second piece is called the file mode. The mode is just a way to say what we're planning to do with the file. What way do we need it to be opened? So these are the different modes you can specify. Read mode, which means reading only and no write access at all. Write mode, which allows both read and write access. Append mode, which means start writing to the end of the file. The reason append mode exists as something separate than write is that the program doesn't have to try and find the end of the file or try and figure out where it needs to write data to. It just starts writing and it ends up at the very end. This is used for log files primarily. And finally, there's truncate mode. Truncate means to delete everything that already exists in the file and to start completely over. Okay, so back to Acropalypse. Say you have a screenshot that you're getting ready to upload or send to someone. You notice that it has some sensitive info in it that doesn't belong in the screenshot, so you crop that part out and hit save. Here's what the file looks like beforehand. The problem is that the save operation doesn't happen in truncate mode. It doesn't delete everything first. So when you click save, this happens. Only the new data is written to the beginning of the file, and all of the existing data at the end is still there. So all that data after the new image is what's potentially recoverable. Now PNG and JPEG are both compressed, which means it's not just a sequential list of pixels, green, blue, red, green, etc. That's why when you see demos of this, the image is distorted and garbled because information earlier in the file is relevant to the compression at the end, relevant to the information at the end. But even distorted, there's still a lot of potential information. So let's do a demo. So you're looking at a screenshot of Visual Studio Code on my own personal machine. I wanted to share how awesome my color scheme looks. It's called Nord, by the way. And I took this screenshot as an example. And just as a side note, Aquine is a program that outputs its own source code. Yeah, I'm a nerd. So before I upload that screenshot, I realized that I have sensitive information on the screen. Things like the file names, the directory paths, information that might show the type of things that I'm working on. So I open up the screenshot in Snipping Tool. This machine's on Windows 11. Crop it down to this and save. So my new reduced size screenshot is ready to upload and share with the world. I posted everywhere. A couple days later, someone who had read about Acropalypse downloaded my screenshot and decided to see if there was any extra information there. There was, because Snipping Tool didn't truncate, it just saved over the original screenshot. And to show what that looks like and how it might be extracted, we need to open the file in a hex editor. And in case you've never seen one, a hex editor allows viewing a file in terms of raw bits. You can change individual bits or bytes without having to open it in the particular program. So in the case of an image file, we can look at the ones and zeros of the image rather than just opening it in some kind of image viewer or photo editor. The one I'm using in this demo is called HXD, but there are tons of other options out there. So this example was a JPEG file, and one of the characteristics of JPEGs is that at the end of the file, you'll find hex value FFD9. And that's exactly what you see here. The end of the file has FFD9. Now, does that mean every file that ends in FFD9 is a JPEG? No. There's also a signature at the beginning of a file called the header. And that's what most programs use to identify what type of file something is, the header, that we'll look at later. In this case, we already know that it's a JPEG, so we're only concerned about the end marker. So if you scroll through the file, and in my case I just searched for it, you'd be scrolling a very long time, what you'll find is in the middle of the file, that end marker again. That's where Snipping Tool finished writing the cropped version of the file. And that's all well and good, but what use is that? Well, everything after that FFD9 signature, the end marker, is part of the original image from before the cropped version was saved. So if you select all of the data starting after the FFD9 marker and go through the end of the file, what you're left with is data from the original image, and you can use that to make a new file. And if you give that new file a .jpeg extension, you can then try to open it inside an image viewer. What happens? Well, error message. Does that mean Acropalypse is fake? Not quite. So before, we talked about there being header information in addition to the trailing FFD9 bytes. So the header has two things: an identifier that signals to programs that this is JPEG data and to try to interpret it as such, and then metadata about the JPEG file. So to fix our JPEG file, I copied the header from a known good working file into this one. All of those parts that are highlighted are just parts of the header block. They might give information about the compression type. If there's a thumbnail, it might be in there. I'll put a link to the JPEG file format in the description. So with our copied header, we click Save in the hex editor, and now our repaired, cropped version opens right up. So as you can see, it's not perfect. There are parts missing, there are things in the wrong place, there's information that's not here. That's to be expected because part of the file wasn't even there. It was covered up by our cropped version. But there's a lot of information here, and you can see things that I might have wanted cut out if I were distributing this. And that's what all of the concern is about. Yes, in this case, I did it to a screenshot of my own machine that I never even uploaded. But if it becomes easy to do this, or easier, it's already easy based on what I just showed, to do this on Windows, then there's potential information exposure. Okay, so we know how it works. The next question is, what, if anything, do you need to do now? Is there anything you should be doing differently? Is there anything you should stop doing? The first, and probably the most important thing to do, is to do whatever you can to stop capturing sensitive information in the first place. Snipping tool, and all other screenshot tools that I know of, allows the capture of regions as opposed to the whole screen. So if you need to share an error message, or if you need to share a screenshot, or if you need to share a really cool color scheme in your text editor, use the capture region option or capture window option and only share the relevant portion. Then there's nothing to crop out and nothing to potentially leak. When you crop these things, always save to a new file. So instead of overwriting the old one, hit the Save As button and call it Picture New, or Picture Cropped, or Picture Cleaned, or whatever, just something that's a new file name. Then you avoid this problem altogether. Next, get your devices patched. If you have a Pixel, the patch is already out. If you're on Windows, the patch hasn't been released yet but is still coming. And then the last recommendation is to consider using third-party screenshot tools. Some of the most common examples are Screenshot or ShareX. They're good now because they don't have the issue we're talking about, but third-party tools have had this kind of problem in the past, and they might in the future. So if you go with a third-party solution, it should be because of the feature set. Okay, the final topic in this video is relevant to those of us in the MSP space doing consulting work, and that concerns what to tell clients. Whenever something starts hitting the news like this, especially if it has a scary, although admittedly clever name, my preference was to be proactive and notify clients before they asked us. This avoids calls that start off by saying, "Hey, I saw this thing called Acropalypse, do I need to worry about it?" It'll make so much more of an impact coming from you directly. So here's what I would tell them. First, remind them to be careful of what they capture in the first place, just like we talked about a few minutes ago. Second, we're on top of getting that patch installed for you. Third, don't forget to patch any mobile devices if you have Pixels, including both company-owned and employee-owned devices. Fourth, let them know that there are alternate screenshot programs available. Now, this is a risky thing, slightly risky at least, from an MSP perspective because it creates a potential support burden. Yes, it's probably a good thing to let your clients know about options such as Screenshot or ShareX, but at the same time, recognize the fact that this could create extra support tickets by doing so, and there's no guarantee that there won't be a security issue in either of those tools later. So just make sure that if you offer that option, that you're explaining it's not the answer. There's nothing that says you have to stop using snipping tool, but if the features would be useful, then it's great to introduce them. And finally, and maybe this should be first, reassure your clients that there's no need to panic. They don't need to start finding every screenshot they've ever uploaded, every file they've ever sent, every photo they've ever texted someone. Your clients should have an idea of whether they have a history of doing this. And to be honest, even if they know they've sent something that has sensitive data in it or that they cropped, chances are good that it's already out there anyway. So the thing to say to clients overall is to reassure them that we have their backs and that we will help them be secure. If you want to see more of this type of content, send me an email, connect with me on LinkedIn, and come visit us at IT Nation Secure this June. I'll be there, lots of my colleagues will be there, and we're talking about security, not just from the ones and zeros technical perspective, but from the perspective of overall business resilience. Hope to see you there. Thanks.